Meet Jonathan Bird, one of the world's top underwater nature cinematographers. Traveling the world on assignment for all the major networks, he is an Emmy Award-winning authority on the underwater world. In freshwater or salt, reefs, wrecks, or caves, Jonathan documents the world beneath the waves. Welcome to the Blue World.
From the highest mountains to the depths of the ocean, life exists in nearly every environment on Earth. But some of these environments are surprising. Deep beneath the floor of this jungle lives a creature uniquely adapted for survival in a harsh, aquatic environment. To find it, I've traveled to the Riviera Maya in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. The Yucatan is full of underwater cave systems. My quarry is the blind cavefish, an animal that lives in the complete and total darkness of caves for its entire life. To begin my quest, I head on over to Yucatec Divers in Playa del Carmen, where I meet Christine Lowe, who will be my guide to search for this exceptionally rare fish. We load the van in the early morning because we have a long drive to a remote cenote in the jungle. Our travels take us over rough dirt roads for miles. Finally, we arrive at the entrance to the cave, deep in the jungle. Christine is a cave diving instructor, someone who knows how to keep me out of trouble in a dangerous cave. We discuss our plan for the dive as we walk over to check out the entrance. It might not look like much, but this sliver of clear water leads into a vast cave system called Pet Cemetery. I really don't want to know why they call it that. Christine shows me on a map that we will only be seeing a tiny fraction of this massive system. Hopefully we can find the cavefish.
And actually, you already see the line going around. It's forming a loop, and this is where we're heading. We will go counterclockwise because in that area, very likely we're going to see the cavefish.
I pay special attention to Christine's briefing. Diving in caves is serious business. Next, it's time to suit up. Christine wears massive double tanks for cave diving, so she has extra air, just in case. This is cave diving protocol. We climb down a convenient set of steps and into the warm, clear water of the cenote, the name for the opening to an underwater cave system that flows deep beneath the jungle above. I grab my camera, do a few last checks, fire up my lights, and follow Christine into the darkness. Just inside the entrance, we're already surrounded by beautiful sculptures of rock. I'm always astonished by the incredible beauty of cave formations. During the last ice age, when sea levels were much lower, the water table was also lower. This cave was bone dry, but the constant dripping of water from the ceiling formed thousands of stalactites. They look like icicles and form nearly the same way, except out of calcium carbonate, a kind of soft stone. They're incredibly delicate. If I bump them, they will break and never grow back. Moving slowly and carefully is my responsibility. Christine and I use a special kind of kick called a frog kick. Instead of kicking our fins up and down like we do in the ocean, here we gently scull them out to the side. This keeps from disturbing the silty sediment on the floor of the cave. This fine sediment is easy to kick up, and it will absolutely destroy the visibility. If we can't see, it's a lot harder to find our way out. Divers come here often, and these fish from the well-lit cenote outside have learned to follow divers' lights into the darkness to hunt in the cave. It definitely poses a threat to pristine and fragile cave ecosystems. With our little hitchhikers in tow, we finally reach the part of the cave where Christine has seen the cave fish before. Now she's carefully poking around looking for one. Since I've never seen one, I'm not exactly sure what to look for. I'm surprised to see what looks like a bush growing in the pitch darkness of the cave. But it's actually the roots of a tree living in the jungle up above. The trees up there have no problem getting plenty of water. Christine is hunting in the tangled maze of roots. Sometimes the cave fish hide in there. I can't help but notice that there's air above my head. This cave actually has some very large air pockets. Since they're connected to the surface through tiny cracks, the air is safe to breathe. So I stick my head up and take a look around. There are more stalactites above water. Because these are in air, they're still growing. On the bottom, Christine points out some extremely thin and fragile flakes of calcium. This forms as a film on the surface of the water below dripping stalactites. When it gets thick enough, it sinks to the bottom. In some places, the flakes are stacked up several inches thick. This little pile is hundreds of years worth. As I continue looking for the cavefish, I stumble across a jawbone from some kind of animal that walked in here and died a long time ago when it was dry. This has to be thousands of years old, but it's in amazingly good condition. Skittering across the sand, I find a cave shrimp. This species is not blind, but moves between the dark and the light portions of the cave. It probably feeds on organic material that originates with the tree roots. Life is tough in the darkness. This is a catfish that couldn't find its way out. Christine searches for another mass of tree roots that might harbor a cavefish. When we find one, I start looking carefully in the roots. At last, I spot it, a pinkish-white fish hiding in there. It's great to see, but impossible to film in that tangled mess. Fortunately for me, the fish shies away from light and swims out of the roots. Even though this species of fish has evolved for thousands of years in the complete absence of light and has no eyes, it can still detect the presence of light through its albino skin using a gland in its head. Why? This fish's only defense is darkness. If it wanders out of the dark part of the cave, other fish can see it, but it won't see them. The blind cavefish needs to stay in the dark where it's safe. My lights make the cavefish swim for cover and safety. The fish that follow me into the cave from outside take an interest in the cavefish. I have to shoo them away. In fact, in the cave ecosystem, this little fish is the top predator, the great white shark, if you will, of the cave. With our mission complete, it's time for Christine and I to turn around and head back out to the light. Christine knows this cave like the back of her hand, but for added safety, we follow a line. On the line are little plastic triangular arrows that point the way out. We could use these in complete darkness by feeling them and holding on to the line the whole way. Christine stops to point out an amazing type of stalactite. Unlike most stalactites, which look more like icicles, these unique formations look like elephant's feet with bulbs instead of points on the end. They're formed when the cave is partially filled with water and the stalactite grows from above, eventually reaching the water. Once the stalactite touches the water, it flattens out. As the water level changes, bulbs form at different levels. Finally, we're nearing the cenote entrance and we head back into the light. Christine explores the cenote just under the surface before we head back to the steps to get out of the water. Wow, that is such a beautiful cenote. All the formations hanging down and everything. That's great. It's hard to believe that there's an entire world living under the jungle in a submerged cave, but life survives everywhere in the blue world, even in complete darkness. Coral reefs are one of the most important inhabitants of shallow tropical oceans. A coral reef may look like a bunch of colorful rocks or perhaps some unusual-looking plants, but it's actually a strange, primitive animal. Each coral animal, called a polyp, is only about the size of a pearl. It's little more than a mouth with some tentacles around it. The tentacles are used to catch plankton to eat. Coral is closely related to another tentacle-equipped animal, the jelly. If you can imagine a small jelly stuck to the bottom that can't swim, that's a coral polyp. But unlike jellies, coral polyps grow together in colonies called a coral head. This coral head has several hundred polyps. A bigger one has thousands. Beneath the living skin of the coral is a skeleton made of calcium carbonate. A dead piece of coral is heavy like a rock because the calcium carbonate is limestone, a type of rock. This heavy limestone base anchors the colony so waves and storms can't move coral reefs. The creation of limestone is slow. It takes hundreds of years for a coral head to reach the size of this brain coral. And in spite of the fact that it looks like a brain, coral has no brain or eyes. Some corals are not hard as a rock. There are many species of soft corals. Some look like bushes or fans. These are often called gorgonians, sea whips, or sea fans. Others look like pastel works of art. Soft corals grow anchored to the bottom and look to most people like plants, but up close you can see the coral polyps. Instead of a hard skeleton, these soft corals have tiny splinters of calcium carbonate inside called spicules. They allow the coral to bend and flex with the waves. When many coral colonies grow together, the result is a reef. It's a living, growing structure that provides nooks and crannies for everything from invertebrates to fish. A reef is like the buildings in a city, providing housing and protection for thousands of animals. When a reef forms, it creates new habitat for other animals. Maybe it starts out as just a small coral head with only space for a few fish. But as it grows over many years, more and more marine life flocks to the reef until it's a thriving metropolis. Of course, all those small fish living around the reef attract larger fish like jacks, barracudas, and even sharks looking for a meal. The reef provides a foothold for algae and sponges. And that, in turn, attracts sea turtles to eat the sponges. And it all starts with just one tiny coral colony. So much life in the tropical oceans depends on coral reefs. Coral reefs can grow quite large. The largest one in the world is the Great Barrier Reef off northeastern Australia, which is over 1,500 miles long. It's so big, it can be seen from space. Coral reefs live all around the world in tropical waters. They can't live in cold water because the coral is unable to create calcium carbonate if the water gets too cold. Unfortunately, there's not much plankton in tropical water. That's why it's so nice and clear. But at night, plankton comes up from cooler, deeper water, and that's when the coral feeds. Unfortunately, most of the time, coral still doesn't catch enough plankton to survive. So it has worked out a great partnership. Many corals have a greenish or brownish color because they have tiny microscopic algae called zooxanthellae living in their skin. The zooxanthellae make energy from the sun's rays. In exchange for having a nice place to live in the skin of the coral, they share some of their energy with the coral. So the coral is partially solar powered. As long as they grow in nice, shallow, sunlit water, solar-powered corals don't need to catch much plankton. This is why reefs form in shallow water. Sometimes I see coral that's turning white as if it's losing its color. This is called bleaching. When corals are subjected to environmental stress, such as high or low water temperatures, changes in salinity or pH, siltation, or even just too much sun from a really low tide, they start to turn white. This happens because the zooxanthellae starts to die. Since corals get their color from the zooxanthellae, when the zooxanthellae goes away, so does the color. And if it goes on for too long, the coral dies because it needs the energy from the zooxanthellae. Since most coral is as hard as a rock, very few animals can actually eat it. But a few can. The crown-of-thorns sea star dines on the outer skin of the coral. An outbreak of crown-of-thorns sea stars can wreak havoc on a reef. All that remains of the coral after a crown-of-thorns attack is a dead white skeleton. Parrotfish eat coral too. They take big, crunchy bites out of the reef and grind up the calcium carbonate as they chew. The parrotfish have a tough beak that's as hard as steel for biting the reef. And the hard particles that they excrete later end up as sand on the beach. It's true, tropical beaches are made partly of fish poop. So the next time you're relaxing on a tropical beach or snorkeling in shallow water looking at the fish, you have coral to thank. It's a very simple animal that can't walk or swim, can't see, and has no brain. But nearly all life in shallow tropical oceans depends on coral reefs.
Don't go away. Jonathan is about to find one of the world's weirdest predators.
This is a fearsome predator. It looks like a blob, or perhaps an algae-covered rock, but it's a shark, blending into the sea floor, waiting for small fish to come within striking range. The shark is called a Wobbegong, and I've come all the way to Australia to find this unusual fish. It's a beautiful morning in the Gold Coast region of southern Queensland, Australia, and Palm Beach Dive Center is putting their boat in the water. I load my gear while the crew prepares scuba tanks. The dive master is my good friend Glenn Holmes, who grew up here. I met him 10 years ago in the Caribbean, and he promised that if I flew all the way to Australia, he would show me some very cool wobbegongs. So here I am. We pull away from the dock and head out to sea. We're heading out to a dive site called Julian Rocks in search of wobbegongs. Captain Herb is driving the boat, and we have about an hour to get there. We arrive at a small, desolate island, barely more than a rock, and start getting ready. Glenn has been diving here for 20 years, and he knows where the sharks are. I suit up and prepare myself for the chilly water.
Yeah, I might want that. Well, let's go see if I can find a wobbegong.
I go over the side and follow Glenn as we search for wobbegongs. This region is right at the edge of the tropics, so there isn't much coral. The bottom is covered mostly in seaweed and rocks. Under an overhang, I find my first wobbegong shark. It's a big, ornate wobbegong, almost as long as me. Wobbegong sharks have adapted to live camouflaged on the bottom, rarely moving a muscle until a meal-sized fish comes into range. It's called an ambush predator because it waits for the prey to come within striking range and then lunges for it, rather than trying to chase prey around. If any of those fish above its head get too close, they'll get gulped down. Nearby, a spotted wobbegong tries to get comfortable. Even though there are millions of tiny silver fish swarming above its head, this wobbegong isn't feeding. It's stuffed. Every wobbegong here has been gorging itself for days. They can barely move. Moving out into deeper water, I find several sand tiger sharks, often called gray nurse sharks in Australia. These sharks look and act a lot more like a typical shark. They let me get pretty close for some pictures. Not long ago, people thought all sharks had to keep swimming like the sand tiger to keep water moving over their gills. For some species like the hammerhead, this is true. Hammerheads must keep swimming at all times or they'll drown. They never rest on the bottom. But many species of sharks sometimes stop swimming and rest on the bottom. Here, a lemon shark is taking a break on the sand, gulping water through its mouth to ventilate its gills. Here's a pair of nurse sharks, common in the Caribbean, also resting on the sand. They're not in the mood to socialize. As I approach, they swim off. Wobbegongs, on the other hand, spend their entire lives on the bottom, patiently waiting for prey. They very rarely swim because it gives away their position. Although there are more than 400 species of sharks, you might be surprised to learn that a large number of them look nothing like the typical predator most of us associate with sharks, like these Caribbean reef sharks. Of course, the wobbegong looks nothing like a reef shark. And neither does the saw shark, another odd-looking bottom dweller that appears more like a stingray with a long, toothed blade on its head. It swings the blade back and forth in a school of fish to catch dinner. In 2006, a new species of bottom-dwelling shark was discovered in Indonesia. It belongs to a group of sharks called epaulette sharks. What made this one different is the fact that it actually walks along the bottom on its fins, so they called it the walking shark. Cameraman Pierre and I charter a traditional Indonesian pinisi and set off to a remote region of Indonesia to find this elusive shark. As the sun sets, we board the inflatable boat and head to the dive site.
I've come to a remote reef in Papua, Indonesia to find a really weird shark.
The walking shark is usually only found at night, so Pierre and I search the reef in the dark after sunset. It takes a while, but we find the little shark. It doesn't like our lights at all, and getting any decent shots of it proves difficult, but you can see how it walks on its fins. It's not exactly a fearsome predator. This little shark hides from us in the reef. The next day, I suit up and roll off the inflatable boat again. This time, we're searching the reef for another Wobbegong. The most common Wobbegong on Indonesian reefs is called the tasseled Wobbegong. Its tassels, located around the edge of its head, allow it to blend into the bottom really well by disguising its shape. On a typical reef, this shark blends right in. It's very confident in its camouflage and won't move even if I get really close. The Wobbegong has a clever way of breathing. Instead of gulping water in through its mouth, it has a set of spiracles, almost like nostrils, right in front of the gills. Water goes in through the spiracles, then back out through the gills. It's an adaptation for a shark that spends a lot of time flat on the bottom. So sharks are a diverse group of animals, and they don't all look the same. The saw shark, walking shark, and Wobbegong are all examples of the amazing kinds of bottom-dwelling sharks.
Meet Jonathan Bird, one of the world's top underwater nature cinematographers. Traveling the world on assignment for all the major networks, he is an Emmy Award-winning authority on the underwater world. In freshwater or salt, reefs, wrecks, or caves, Jonathan documents the world beneath the waves. Welcome to the Blue World.
Have you ever wondered why a sailfish has a sail and a pointy bill? Well, I have. And to find out, I've traveled down to Cancun, Mexico to see if I can get up close to a sailfish in the wild. My day begins at the crack of dawn.
Nice early start, 6 a.m. Time to go find some sailfish.
I load the car with all my gear and then we're off to the marina. My guide is Jorge Loria from Phantom Divers, who put this trip together for me. It's a little tense this morning because the weather is not looking good for working offshore.
I don't know.
Pretty windy.
It is.
The wind is blowing at nearly 20 knots, which means that if we had any sense, we'd stay home. But this is the calmest day we're gonna get this week. It's go now or not at all. The heavy surf speaks for itself. We're in for a rough day. We arrive at Solo Buceo, the dive shop in Cancun that's running the expedition. Their boat is designed for running way offshore. I carry my gear in from the car. Fortunately, I'll be traveling light today. Interaction with sailfish is best done without scuba gear, so I'll just be using a mask, fins, and snorkel. The protection of the marina belies the rough ocean conditions. A look at the trees shows the wind, and just outside the harbor, the waves break. Yikes. With all our gear loaded, we push off the dock and head out to sea. Alberto, the mastermind of this expedition, is on the phone checking to see if any fishermen have seen the sailfish this morning. Our captain pushes up the throttles for the long run out to sea. It will be at least 2 hours to get anywhere near sailfish territory.
Right, we're gonna navigate a couple hours north of Contoy, and we're going to be looking for the birds eating the sardines, and therefore the sailfish are there. So it's going to be a 2.5 hour ride. Everybody's got masks and fins.
Our plan is to look for birds.
Believe it or not, to find sailfish, we need to find some birds flying around. That's because sailfish love to eat sardines, little silvery fish about this big. But to find the sardines, we find some birds that are also hunting the sardines.
Everyone on the boat keeps an eye open as we drive around the open sea, hoping for a glimpse of birds on the horizon. And after a few hours, we find the birds. Unfortunately, some fishermen saw them too.
Well, we're like 20 miles out and we found birds flying all over the place, feeding on a bait ball. And I think that there's some sailfish and we're gonna jump in and see if we can find them.
We pull up to the fish under the birds and it's time for us to jump in.
Okay, sir, go. You are ready to go.
Jorge got in first and he has his hand up to tell us where the sailfish are. My first glimpse under the water reveals just blue and some bubbles. But then a sailfish comes racing out of the distance. The sardines are packed into a tight school, sometimes called a bait ball. They're trying to protect themselves against the sailfish by staying close to each other. But the sailfish are chasing them and attacking from all sides. They pin the sardines against the surface so they can't get away. The sardines often swim close to me for protection. I'm starting to get worried about those sharp bills on the front of the sailfish. These beautiful fish are among the fastest animals in the sea. They can swim 60 miles per hour. That's as fast as a car on the highway. A sailfish uses its bill like a sword to slash through the bait ball and stun a sardine. Then it can gobble the fish down. They're getting awfully close. Sometimes the sailfish even skewer sardines on the end of their bills. Whoa, did you see that? Watch it again in slow motion. Here comes a sailfish from the left, and it nails a sardine right in front of the camera. Even in slow motion, it's fast. Watch it even slower. Boom, right there. Talk about good aim. The action is incredibly fast-paced and tiring. I have to keep up with the bait ball, which keeps moving. My legs are getting tired. Eventually, I can't keep up with the bait ball and the action drifts too far away. The boat comes and picks me up. I'll get a quick rest, then they'll drop me back in close to the fish. A few minutes later, I'm ready to go again.
Ready?
Go, Cat. Go.
I get my bearings and then I'm back into the sailfish. You can see in this shot that when a sailfish swims, it folds its dorsal fin down to reduce drag. But then, boom, it pops the dorsal fin up like a sail. Did you see that? Watch it again in slow motion. There, we can only guess why the sailfish has such a large sail-like dorsal fin. But it appears they use the sail to frighten the sardines by surprising them or possibly to look larger when they're herding the fish. The sailfish work together to keep the sardines from escaping below, and one by one they pick off each and every sardine until the entire bait ball is gone.
Oh man, that is exhausting. Swimming around with all these fish that are the fastest fish in the ocean. They have like a lance on their nose. I thought I was gonna get skewered. They swim right at the camera and zoom at the last minute. But man, what an exhilarating experience. Whew. I'm so tired.
It takes a couple hours to get back to the dock, and even though we've had a long, rough day at sea, the experience was worth it. Sailfish are magnificent animals and something I had never seen before. Being right in the middle of a school of sailfish attacking sardines is definitely nature at its wildest. Cod Hole is a dive site about 40 miles off the coast of Queensland, Australia, on the Great Barrier Reef. We head out on the live-aboard boat Spoil Sport to meet up with some very large fish. We see some of the marvelous Great Barrier Reef along the way. Then Kieran gives a dive briefing.
We're going to have potato cod, a big fat friendly fish, this sort of size, greyish with big black spots on them. Over the years they've been fed by many dive operators. We no longer feed them, but they will still associate divers with food.
Since this is nature and we're dealing with wild animals, you never know what we're going to find. But with any luck, we'll meet up with this dive site's most famous resident.
And that resident is known to the locals as a potato cod, which is kind of a funny name since it's neither a potato nor a cod. It's actually a grouper. Let's go check it out.
I head down on the lookout for a large fish. And sure enough, I spot one pretty quickly. When it notices me, it turns around and comes right over like a puppy. Usually the fish try to stay away from divers. This is a welcome change. The potato cod is curious about me and the camera, and that has been one of this fish's problems. Potato cod generally stay in one area and move slowly, so they're relatively easy to find and hunt. The numbers of potato cod have been dropping, and they've becoming scarce, so now they're on the endangered species list. Here at Cod Hole, divers and fish get along just fine. There's no fishing allowed. Soon, the cod that has been checking me out moves over to say hi to a couple of fellow divers. Maybe it just wants its picture taken because it goes right for Julia, our production manager, and her camera. Or maybe it just thinks Julia's brought some snacks. I swim on to look for more potato cod. I spot a beautiful white and orange nudibranch cruising along the reef at breakneck speed. I mean, breakneck for a nudibranch. I glance up as a large school of fish passes overhead. A little further along, I find a giant clam. The light-sensitive organs in its mantle cause it to contract when the shadow of my hand passes over. That's a big clam. A little further along, I discover a resting white-tip reef shark. but as I sneak up close for a shot, it swims away. Not as friendly as the potato cod. As I continue exploring, I finally come across another one of these massive groupers hiding in the reef. This one does not seem to be interested in me, but it's staying in one place. I wonder what's going on. It's being cleaned. There are several small fish moving over and into its body, picking off parasites and pieces of dead skin. I could stay here an hour watching this fascinating behavior, but soon the cleaners are finished and the cod swims away. That's my cue to leave too, so I head back to the boat. As I swim back up from a great dive, I'm glad that these curious, friendly, and mellow fish are protected.
You know what? They should call them couch potato cod, because they just hang around all day.
It's nice to know that there are places where fish are being protected. Amazing places like the Great Barrier Reef.
Don't go away. Jonathan's friend Diver Ed makes the underwater world come alive. But what will happen to Mini Jonathan?
Today I'm in beautiful Bar Harbor, Maine, where I'm spending the day with my friend Diver Ed and his amazing dive-in theater program aboard the Starfish Enterprise.
I have to go, whoa, stay away, secret eye. See if it grabs a hold of your head hair. Man, look at all the hair pulled out of my head.
Diver Ed takes families out on his boat up in Bar Harbor every summer for an underwater adventure where nobody has to get wet, except him.
I'm Diver Ed. You've already met my lovely wife, Captain Evil, right over here.
Ed's wife, Edna, is known as Captain Evil, although I don't really know why. She seems perfectly nice to me. She's part of the show, and so are the family dogs.
Stick it on over your head. If you have big floppy ears, you can pull those through like that. Strap on the side goes around your back. On the end of the strap is a clip. You just clip it to the ring in the front and then pull on the free end to tighten it. Everyone give him a hand. Good job, Levi. Way to go. Good boy.
And members of the audience get deputized too.
What is it? Noah? Noah, you're my head passenger in charge of the toilet today, Noah. Noah, the toilet boy. Woohoo! Everybody loves a good toilet boy.
This is Mini Ed number 124.
Diver Ed always takes a dive buddy with him because it's dangerous to dive alone. And since I'm joining the dive today, they get a dive buddy for me too.
This is Mini Jonathan, and he's got 4 spins on. He will be diving today, and he is going to be filming the expedition down there, so he's ready to go.
We're not in the tropics up in Maine. The water temperature today is only 50 degrees.
A lot of stuff for cold water.
Diver Ed and I get a little help jumping into the water. Once we're underwater, Diver Ed wastes no time. He madly swims around collecting creatures to bring back on board for the passengers to examine and touch. I can barely keep up with his frantic pace. When he has collected enough specimens, he heads back to the surface to get his specially equipped high-definition underwater camera to take people on a real-time underwater adventure. The lights bring the ocean bottom alive for his passengers back on the boat.
They found a sea cucumber. This is a relative of starfish, and starfish have 5 rows of suction cup feet.
As Diver Ed and Mini Ed check out a sea cucumber, Captain Evil gives the audience a lesson.
So there's the mouth, and you can see that it looks just a lot like the butt. It's pretty hard to be an animal where your mouth looks just like your butt, but that's the way it is for sea cucumbers. Boing.
Diver Ed and his camera find the most amazing creatures right under the boat.
He is very, very cute, Diver. Look, he's got a little spike on his head. He's adorable. So all that stuff he sticks on. I know, he's looking right at us. Look at his little grumpy mouth. Oh man.
As Diver Ed and I continue across the bottom, he shows the audience all kinds of amazing animals that live in the cold water of the North Atlantic, while Edna narrates from above.
This is a baby sea scallop. Look at those eyes. All those black dots look like poppy seeds are eyes. Scallops have 2 rows of eyes rimming each shell. Nobody really knows why, so you guys should go to college and become marine biologists and tell me why, because I want to know. This is a baby.
In between sea stars, sculpins, and other cool critters, Diver Ed and I have some fun goofing around.
Hey, you found something else down here. What's this? This is Jonathan Bird. How cool. Not quite sure what he's saying. It's probably good to breathe.
Meanwhile, Mini Ed has found himself a mysterious-looking shell. That's not just a shell, it's a hermit crab.
Now you can see a hermit crab has 2 different sized claws. They're actually more closely related to a lobster than a crab. And there's his eyes. Boink, here he comes, Diver Ed. He's peeking out. He just has to know. Diver Ed, what a nice shot. What a cute shrimp this is.
And then Ed finds an angry lobster.
Diver, he's beautiful, but he doesn't look friendly. Oh, yikes. As I said, I don't know why we have to keep getting new cameras. There he goes, Diver Ed. Something's gone horribly wrong. Diver Ed, you need help and you need it now. His buddy is going to have to come over. Oh no, Diver Ed, Mini Ed needs help now. He's in big trouble. Oh man, Diver Ed, you got to do something. He's being used as a battering ram.
After his escape from the lobster, poor Mini Ed stumbles into the clutches of a stinging anemone.
Diver Ed, can you do anything? I don't think he can move. Oh, I can't believe he did that. We tell them not to do this.
Unfortunately, his heart stopped. He needs CPR right away.
All right, Mini Ed's heart stopped. He now needs CPR, 2 rescue breaths, a couple chest compressions. Fortunately, Eddie is certified in CPR. This is a really good reason why you should always go with a dive buddy in case you need underwater CPR. Diver Ed, thank goodness for that. So it worked. Good use of the buddy system. I'm glad you were there for him.
Mini Jonathan, meanwhile, is so busy filming, he's not paying attention. And whoa, buddy, look out from behind! Fortunately, I come to the rescue, and Mini Jonathan is going to be okay. The dive is so exhilarating that Diver Ed and I are pretty pumped when we surface. I mean, really pumped. I mean, pumped up.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Be a clam, I'm going to be a starfish. Now, unfortunately for Lindsay the clam, it's feeding time for me, Eddie the starfish. If I wanted to eat Lindsay the clam, I'd grab hold of those 2 shells with my arms with a suction cup feet and hold on really tight. Then I'd spread those shells as far apart as possible, eject my stomach out of my mouth. Ready? Stick it down between the 2 shells, suck all of her guts into my stomach. Once my stomach's full, I suck it back into my mouth. You've got some great tasting guts, Lindsay. Everyone give her a hand. Good job, Lindsay. Way to go. Way to get rid of your guts. This is a sea scallop. A lot of people want to know what I do for a living in the wintertime. I dive for... I didn't know that was going to happen, did you? Everyone knows what this is? Lobster! Lobsters have 2 types of claws. The bigger one is used for crushing things. What kind of claw is that? Crusher claw, good. What about the smaller one? Pinches things.
Pinches and ripping
Pincher claw, good. Let's see if it pinches. One, two, do, 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 do. Come here, lobster. See if you can get me. If it's clear, that's just salt water. Any idea what it's going to be doing if it starts to turn brown? It's going pooping. That's the butt end of the sea cucumber. They really tighten up their muscles and make themselves hard and round. Not only that, but they secrete a wonderful mucus that makes them really slippery. Now, if anyone ever asks you, Rebecca, if you learned anything on this trip today, what are you going to say? Yes or no? Did you learn anything?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yes is the correct answer.
After the show, everyone gets to examine the specimens and even hold them before Diver Ed returns them to the ocean unharmed. Eventually, it's time to head back. My dive buddy Minnie Jonathan and I will never forget this day aboard the Starfish Enterprise.